Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're going to kind of strip away the gloss.
Okay.
We live in this era where visibility is, it's everything, right? It's the currency.
If you're not seen, you don't exist. That's the feeling.
Exactly. You scroll, you track followers. But I want to start with a question that's a little uncomfortable. Is fame actually a destination worth reaching?
Or is it just a very shiny, very heavy burden?
Yes.
It's really the question of the century. We just assume the answer is yes, get famous, be happy.
Of course.
But the anecdotes we have in our source material today, they suggest it is not that simple at all.
We conflate fame with success.
All the time. And they're often two completely different animals.
And to help us unpack this, we are diving into a really fantastic memoir. It's called Eluding Fame by Allen Morris.
And if you're asking who is Allen Morris,
That's the point.
that is exactly the point. He's not the guy on the movie poster.
No, he's the guy standing next to the camera, a career television producer, a director from Texas who spent 50 years working just outside the spotlight.
In 50-plus years as a writer and filmmaker, I worked with giants in the industry. Prominent people on stage and screen in sports, business, medicine, politicians, and criminals. Despite my own desire for it, fame eluded me.
And that perspective is so crucial. Usually we hear about fame from the famous person who has a brand to protect or
a biographer who is just guessing.
right. But Morris is the worker bee. He's directing everything from commercials to, industrial films with absolute legends. We're talking Orson Welles, Mickey Rooney.
Willie Nelson. But the book isn't just a list of guess who I met.
No.
It's a study of celebrity. And our mission today is to look at the difference between fame and character. Because Morris has these stories that just flip the script on what we think we know.
It's a distinction he makes right at the beginning of Eluding Fame. That you can have this life of high adventure and significance without ever having your name on the marquee.
So let's jump in, the origin story. For Morris, it all starts in 1960. He's 5 years old in a restaurant in Dallas.
And this is where he meets his first idol. His dad points to a table and says, "That's Mickey Mantle."
In 1960s Dallas, Mickey Mantle was basically a demigod.
Oh, absolutely. But Morris admits in the book, he didn't know a single baseball stat. He didn't even know what a home run was.
He just knew his dad was impressed.
Exactly. He was just awed by the idea of fame itself.
And Mantle comes over, winks at him, shakes his hand. But the real lesson comes later that night.
He's in bed, all excited, telling his mom he wants to be famous like Mickey Mantle.
And his mother drops this line that, it really becomes the thesis for the entire book.
It's so profound for a 5-year-old. She tells him, fame is fleeting. Character lasts.
Wow.
She was distinguishing between being known and being good.
What my mother said was that maybe I would be famous someday, but what was important was character. She said, "You should aspire to be a better person. Fame is fleeting. Character lasts."
But his childhood wasn't all winking baseball stars. There's this other moment in the book that is, it's visceral. It makes your teeth hurt.
Oh, I know the one. November 2010, 1963.
The day JFK was assassinated.
And Morris is 9. He's in the dentist chair.
This is where personal trauma and national history just collide in the most painful way possible.
You can't make this up. The dentist has the radio on. Walter Cronkite is on the air saying the president has been shot.
So the dentist is distracted, emotional.
Completely. And he goes to pull Morris's tooth, and in all the confusion, he forgets the Novocaine.
Ouch! That is pure nightmare fuel.
Morris describes it as this electric pain from his mouth to his toes. He screams, he's squeezing the nurse's hand.
And the dentist realizes his mistake.
Immediately, he's horrified.
Yeah.
And he actually tells Morris's mother later, out of guilt, "I want to pay for Alan's college when the time comes."
Which, spoiler alert,
never happened.
But that moment, it seems to define his relationship with media. He's watching the world change through a broadcast, and he is physically marked by it.
It absolutely cements the power of television in his mind.
I was riveted by the coverage of the assassination. I sat up all night watching the coverage from earlier in the day played over and over. The following Sunday after church, as our family was walking into a country club for dinner with friends, several of us kids went into a room that had a television on. There was Oswald, handcuffed to a deputy sheriff, when suddenly a figure appeared in the foreground, and we watched as Jack Ruby shot Oswald. Standing there watching it happen, I realized I was witnessing history.
So let's fast forward. He's a young director in Houston. He gets an assignment to shoot a PSA, a public service announcement. The talent, Mickey Rooney.
Okay, so this is the 70s. Rooney's doing dinner theater. He has this reputation for being a ham, right?
It's a bit over the top, yeah. Histrionic. That's the word Morris uses. He's expecting a nightmare.
And Rooney shows up with an entourage.
Oh, yeah. 5 or 6 donors, hangers-on. It's a scene. And the first thing he says is, I don't need cue cards. I know the script.
Which is usually a giant red flag. So Morris, the professional, he pulls out his stopwatch. He calls action. Rooney does the spot.
Morris calls cut, looks at the watch. It's 38 seconds. The spot needs to be 30.
And we should pause here because today, 8 seconds over, you just speed it up in the edit.
Not then. In the 70s, on film, 38 seconds for a 30-second spot is garbage. It's unusable.
So the stakes are high. He has to tell a Hollywood legend he failed.
And he does. He tells him, we're 8 seconds over. Rooney just nods, says he's ready. They roll again.
And this is where the pro shows up.
Rooney delivers the lines, hits the time perfectly.
Yeah.
But at the very end, he just holds his expression. He freezes, staring into the lens.
And Morris is mesmerized.
Totally mesmerized. He forgets to yell, cut.
So Rooney finally breaks character and says, okay, cut it. But then he pulls Morris aside.
And this is where we see the real person, not the reputation.
Yeah.
Rudy whispers to him, look, kid, don't be intimidated. You're the boss on the set.
That's incredible.
He hands Morris a crumpled script and basically proposes a little conspiracy. He says, act like you're giving me notes. Tell me to read it differently so the crew sees you're in charge.
It's 4D chess.
It is. He wasn't being a diva. He was mentoring him. He says, less Whitey Marsh, more Andy Hardy. He coached Morris on how to direct him.
He used his status to elevate the young director. It goes right back to character last.
Exactly.
I was appreciative of how Rooney went out of his way to take time to mentor me in that brief moment. Here was a man who had started out at the age of 3 performing before the cameras. And now all these years later, he was teaching me to take charge of the set as a director. He treated me as a colleague. And that was a lesson I tried to incorporate in every production I worked on since that day. Treat your performers and your crew with respect and dignity, because we're all on the same team.
And speaking of legends with reputations, we have to talk about Orson Welles.
This story is wild. So Morris is producing an industrial film for Frito-Lay.
For Frito-Lay. About a new plant in Casa Grande, Arizona.
He wants a big-name narrator. His budget for the entire film is $50,000. Maybe $15,000 for talent.
Which is not exactly Citizen Kane money.
Not even close.
Yeah.
But he finds out Welles doesn't have an agent, so he just calls Las Vegas information.
He cold calls Orson Welles.
And the operator connects him.
And Welles just answers the phone. This is Orson Welles.
It sounds like a prank, which is exactly what Morris's wife thinks when Welles calls back.
Oh, this part is great. Morris is out on a shoot. His wife picks up. Welles says who he is, and she just replies, yeah, right. This is Rita Hayworth.
To his ex-wife.
The boldness. But Welles apparently loved it. He was charmed. He agrees to do it.
But the reality of working with him, it sets in when the tape arrives.
Yeah, Morris isn't in the studio with him. He gets the tape, puts it in the machine, and his heart just sinks.
Why?
The first minute is just coughing, hacking sounds of him drinking water. It sounds like a medical tape.
Oh, no.
And then the first read is, it's boring. It's flat. Morris thinks he's just wasted the entire talent budget. Then you hear it on the tape. Welles stops himself. He says, I don't like that. It was all wrong. And then he just switches it on. The second take is magic. The voice of God appears.
But there's this one detail, a factual correction that the book Eluding Fame points out that shows his genius. It has to do with an indigenous tribe.
Right. The Hohokam.
Which Morris had been pronouncing with a Texas accent.
And Welles, the perfectionist, stops the recording and insists on the correct pronunciation. He says, it is Hohokam, accent on the first syllable.
That's the irony, right? He's narrating a film about a chip factory, but he cares that much about linguistic accuracy.
He couldn't turn off his intellect, even when he was literally phoning it in for a snack food company.
During the months that followed, I had many phone conversations with Orson. He told me to call him Orson. I sent a copy of the completed film to Welles, and he complimented me on how well it turned out and invited me to have lunch the next time I was in L.A. or Las Vegas. I called him a few days before I was going to be in Los Angeles in the fall of 1985. We made an appointment to meet at a restaurant he liked. Unfortunately, he had a sudden heart attack and died just a few days before we were supposed to meet. I was upset at his death. I admired him and respected his talent. He had been so kind and helpful to me. His death was a real blow.
Okay, let's bring it back to Texas. Willie Nelson. Morris interviews him on his bus, the Honeysuckle Rose.
And what's interesting here is the duality of Willie. You've got the outlaw image, the long hair, the pot smoke, the rebellion.
Right. But then Willie starts talking about his grandmother.
He talks about his spiritual roots, growing up in the church. He says the outlaw thing was just a label the industry gave him.
The thing that stands out to me is the story about the Stardust album.
A huge gamble. At the peak of his outlaw country fame, he tells his label he wants to record an album of pop standards.
Georgia on my mind, Blue Skies.
The label thought it was career suicide. They were convinced he was going to alienate his entire fan base.
And instead,
it stayed on the charts for a decade. A full decade.
Wow.
It proved he wasn't just a genre singer. He was a stylist. He trusted his own ear over all the market research.
Back when I was doing a lot of corporate events, we had Willie Nelson as entertainer at least a dozen times. The only other group we worked with as much was probably the Beach Boys. Willie always went over well with audiences, and he approached those corporate shows with the same energy and professionalism as he did at the bigger shows and arenas. Willie Nelson is the real deal.
So, from music royalty to TV royalty, Larry Hagman, J.R. Ewing. Morris wants to pitch a movie to him. The meeting takes place in a hot tub in Malibu.
Of course it does. With Diane Cannon and Joel Grey just hanging around.
The peak 80s experience. But what I love about the Hagman section is his philosophy on fame.
Oh, the autograph rule.
Yes. So Hagman would sign, but he had a rule. He wanted a human interaction. He'd say, I'll sign, but you have to do something for me, sing a song, tell a joke.
He wanted to turn a transaction into a connection. He didn't want to just be a prop in someone's vacation photo.
And there's this great quote from his mother, Mary Martin, Peter Pan.
Oh, this is classic.
Yeah.
A fan asks her, how does it feel that your son is an icon?
And she says,
She replies, my son is a television star. I am an icon.
The shade, but also the accuracy. She knew the difference between current fame and a lasting legacy.
A huge difference.
I saw Larry Hagman many times through the years. He would always speak to me if we happened to be at the same event, especially when he was in Dallas shooting his series. I remember one time walking together across a parking lot when one of his fans came up to him and asked for an autograph. He told him that they had to do something creative to get his autograph, and the girl quoted a poem. After he signed it, he told them to get my autograph. He said that they had to do another poem, and so she quoted, "Fog comes in on little cat feet and sits on silent haunches and then moves on." I signed the autograph, and as we walked off, Larry leaned over to me and said, "That's kind of fun, isn't it?"
So you have all these fun stories, but Eluding Fame doesn't ignore the fact that fame can be an absolute nightmare. The chapter on Michael Morton is heavy.
It's the dark side of that coin, yeah. Michael Morton became famous for the worst possible reason.
He was wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife.
He spent decades in prison. His name was in the headlines, his face on the news, portrayed as a monster.
He was innocent.
Completely innocent. DNA evidence exonerated him years later. The fame he experienced was infamy. It destroyed his life.
And yet Morris highlights Morton's character
As the pinnacle of the book.
Yeah.
Because of the forgiveness aspect.
Right.
Morton says something incredible. He says holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison and hoping the other guy dies. He chose to forgive everyone.
That's a level of character that goes so far beyond what we usually talk about with celebrities.
It brings it all back to that first quote from Morris's mom. Fame, or in this case, infamy, was fleeting. But his character is what survived.
Which leads us to the epilogue. Morris looks back on his 50-year career. He worked with all these legends, but he says very candidly he was a second-string player.
He wasn't Martin Scorsese. He wasn't the guy giving the acceptance speech.
He's the guy making sure the guy giving the speech was in focus.
Yeah. And he references a friend, Araya, who said that time is the mystery ingredient. You can have all the talent and drive in the world.
But sometimes the timing just doesn't align for fame, and that's okay.
It's a crucial lesson. Morris compares it back to baseball, of course. He talks about a player named Rocky Colavito.
Famous in 1959, hit 42 home runs, but is largely forgotten by most people today.
Was he a failure? No. He was a success. And that's the distinction Morris lands on. He achieved honor and happiness.
Those are different metrics than fame.
Totally different. Fame relies on other people's attention. Honor relies on your own actions.
So what does this all mean for us? You know, living in a world where everyone is trying to get famous for 15 seconds on TikTok.
I think eluding fame is a reminder to focus on the craft, not the applause. You look at Rooney teaching a young director, Orson Welles obsessing over hokum for a corporate film, Michael Morton choosing forgiveness.
The fame part is just noise.
The work in the character. That's the signal.
It's such a powerful reframing. You can live a life of high adventure without ever being the guy getting swarmed at dinner.
In fact, Larry Hagman might argue that being swarmed at dinner is the worst part.
That is a very good point. So here's the thought I want to leave you with. If you had the choice, really think about this, would you trade places with Allen Morris? 50 years of fascinating work, meeting legends, but total anonymity.
Or would you choose to be the household name who can't eat a burger in peace?
It's the difference between being an observer of history and being the subject of it.
And Morris makes a pretty compelling case for being the observer.
Does it bother me that I never achieved the fame I once desired? Not at all. I met some fascinating people. I traveled to fascinating places across the globe. And I had a fascinating career. What more could I ask for?
Okay, let's unpack this in your own lives. Are you chasing the marquee or the character? We want to thank Allen Morris and his book, Eluding Fame, for this incredible look behind the curtain.
It's a great read. We highly recommend it.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.
Buy it now at EludingFame.com.